Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Remi. Thanks for tuning in. On my channel, I discuss on faith, lifestyle, and development. So if you're interested in any of those things, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So I'm super excited about today's video because I have my friend on. Today's episode because we're gonna be having a conversation. We're gonna be talking, and my friend, I call her Daya, but she goes by Elizabeth Adewale. But I call her Daya. She's my friend. We've known each other for years now. So I'm really excited. I'm sorry, I couldn't hide my excitement. I tried to be like all like posh and is a lie. I couldn't hide it. Oh my God, I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this too. It's actually really I'm actually very excited. So I think I'm learning how to contain my own excitement.
So this has been a long time coming. I think the first time I mentioned doing a video with Dio was like October last year or something, or November, and here we are, July 2020, and I'm so happy to have you here. So guys, today we're going to be talking on mental health, right? And we're going to be having conversations. We're going to be talking just one-on-one and sharing with you all on mental health. And just to give you some background on my friend Dio, or Elizabeth, her full name is Elizabeth Adewale. She has a master's degree. She's a master, y'all. We're not playing over here. So she has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, right? And, she has some expertise with relational and individual therapist work. She's also, a sex therapist and a narrative therapist as well. Feel free to add to your bio, Dio. School and anything about you that you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I love being a therapist. I really do. And I have other educational aspirations. I want to be a certified sex educator, just so that I can I guess feel better in being a sex therapist, and just to learn more about that. That's really where my passion is, to really educate people around sex, and especially being a Christian, I want to understand what sex is more, and but particularly understand it from God's perspective, because that's really my passion. And I love couples, so yeah, those are my passions: sex and couples. And God.
No, definitely. And Daya, she's right. If you want to talk about sex, if you want to talk about relationships, I highly recommend. Okay, so she has a whole page on Instagram. I'm gonna put her name on Instagram. Follow her. She makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
So because Daya has some therapist background, I just wanted us to talk. So we're not claiming to be expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert with mental health. We're not claiming to be any expert, but we just want to talk, right? We want to have a conversation and really understand how this whole thing works, right? So I'm going to be asking Daya some questions, and she's going to be responding, and just to sort of talk and educate everyone watching this video, because most of my viewers are women in my age, so women in their 20s and 30s, and I figured this is a great conversation to have. So thank you once again for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
I love mine.
Yeah.
So there are different parts. There are going to be different parts to this topic, right? It's sort of like a series, if you will. Maybe 1 or 2 parts, or 3 maybe, I'm not sure, depending on how it goes. So I'm just going to have to break it down. So the first part will kind of focus on, mental health generally, maybe women and mental health, and then we'll get to where we have to talk about, Africans and mental health, Christianity and mental health, and things like that. So let's get started. And also, at the end, we'll talk about, depression and anxiety a little bit, just to give people some more context about that. Because a lot of times when we hear mental health, people just think depression, but there's more to that. So, all right. First things first, what is mental health?
Okay. And again, just like I call her Auntie Remi. You know, we have to like respect the whole, culture. So if I say Auntie Remi, that's we're referring to the host, or I am referring to the host. So mental health, is pretty much like well-being, right? Emotional, psychological, social well-being, right? And like it affects how we think, how we feel, what we do, right? So that's just really mental health. And like I think when we think about mental health, I want us to think about well-being and just like a balance, right? If someone is one or the other and one extreme of the other, then they're not healthy, right? So just like fullness and wholeness and well-being, and again, how we feel, how we think, and what we do. So that's like the general overview of what mental health is.
Yeah, and I fully agree. Um, it is well-being, right? It has to do with how we're feeling, how we're doing mentally, how we're doing, with in our minds, and how we're just feeling generally, but mostly our mental space and how that's, what that even looks like, what that feels like, on a day to day. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So it's more of like an emotional, psychological, social well-being. Um, According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So I liked how it emphasized, can cope with the normal stresses of life, because sometimes it's a lot to cope with the normal stresses of life. It can be overwhelming, and yeah. So I like the fact that you mentioned that, because there's limits sometimes, and there's capacity based on who you are and what you're able to tolerate. But being able to cope properly with the normal stresses of life is part of having a good mental health, right? So, and I'm glad that you mentioned about well-being and balancing. It's so important. It's so important. So for this series, I think we're going to be focusing more so on talking about the emotional and the social well-being part, right? Taking into account what's happening in 2020 with the virus, with all kinds of crazy stuff happening in 2020. So just like, our emotional well-being, our social well-being, how is that going? So I just wanted to, just throw that out there for like, okay, what are your thoughts on taking into account everything that has happened so far? This is July 31st, 2020.
Right.
And taking into account everything that's been happening in 2020 with the virus and everything else, and in light of emotional and social well-being. What are your thoughts?
I think like, so we're seeing like around this time, like coronavirus has really shut down. Like I know like 2020, the January 1st, 2020, everyone was like, it's gonna be my year.
Yeah.
It can still be our year, but like look at what we are now. Like, some people celebrated, January, February, beginning of March, people were doing celebrations, and then mid-March, everything was shut down. So that can definitely affect like our mental space, right? A lot of people like, like there was a bunch of articles saying that it's okay to grieve the fact that you cannot, go on your annual vacation this year because nobody wants to catch coronavirus and die. You know what I mean? It's okay to grieve these little things. Like, let's go hang out. You can't even hang out anymore and wear masks. So like these things can definitely affect our headspace. And then we're thinking about like social, right? At least in the US, right? George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, like among other atrocious things that have been happening, particularly between like Caucasian Americans and African Americans in this country. That is something that we haven't healed from as a country, right? And just seeing everything just spewing up, right? Spewing up. So there is also social unrest, right? And then it's like, again, if mental health, right, is about well-being, if people can't handle those two things as just examples, right? Imagine what people are going through. Imagine how anxiety has increased. Imagine how depression has increased, right? Imagine how anger has increased, right? So it's just like this intersection of like this unrest, and it seems like in all aspects of people's lives. And then because we have so much time to ourselves, now we have to think, right? where am I? What am I doing? Have I accomplished my goals? And I know that there was this meme that was going around at the beginning where it's like, if you don't come out of this quarantine learning a skill or something, that you lack discipline. And I remember just reacting so negatively to that. Like, who do you think you are?
We're trying to stay alive.
So like, yeah, so like, just like imagine all of that, right? So there's just a lot going on. And like, now it's like we have all this time to take a deep look at ourselves and our society, right? And definitely there's it will affect our mental health.
Yeah.
It's a lot emotionally and socially. There's just a lot coming together during this time.
Now, I fully agree. Like, now we have all this time to really like think, right? To really evaluate, to really reflect on who we are, what our mental space is about. So, for example, if before COVID, you were trying to run away from how your mental space was doing by getting distracted by other things, by partying a lot, by drinking, by socializing with friends, and you're not really paying attention to your mental health. Well, now that we cannot do that,
right.
You know what I mean? It's kind of forced everyone to just really, really think about themselves and think about their space, their mental space, and how they're doing mentally. And I was, saying to someone the other day, I said, 2020 has changed us. Whatever is happening right now has never happened in humanity. Like, I don't even realize how much we've changed. Like, the world is literally changing in front of us. And we're experiencing it and we're seeing it, and it's just like, oh my God, so the mental space, the emotional well-being, the social well-being, it's almost like you have to catch yourself to take care of yourself. If you need to log off social media for some time, do that. If you need to cut off the news for some time, do that. If you need to just cut off every form of negativity, do that. You know what I mean? So just to protect your well-being, mentally, emotionally, and also socially. Like, and I like what you said about the whole racism issue as well. That's a lot. That's a lot, because now you're thinking, as a Black person, we're Black women on this video, and most of my viewers are women and most are Black, and it's just like, okay, now there's so many things, so many hurdles, I feel like, right? First, it's being a woman, then your color, then so many factors, so it can mess with your mind space if you're not careful. Right. So many things to worry about. You know what I mean? I was saying the other day, especially when the whole thing, blew up on George Floyd, I was saying to myself, I said, well, now this is another thing to worry about. We're already worrying about the virus. Now I need to worry about something else. Like when I go out, or when I'm jogging, or when I'm taking a walk, should I be worried about something else? So there's a lot of unrest, socially, emotionally, and it's just trying to find and take care of your mental health in the middle of all the craziness, Dio. The craziness.
Yeah. And it's just like, at this point, it's like, sometimes we get so busy, right? Oh, I'm too busy to worry about that, but now it's like, well, you can still be busy, but now you have extra time to actually worry about your mental health. Right? And I think it's like a lot of us are really realizing that maybe we're not all that healthy. Right. And I know for sure, like, in like for months, right, I had to like go back to therapy. I had to go back, and I'm just saying, like, I don't think I'm okay. And and the thing is, like, it's okay, right, to admit that. It's okay to say that I don't think I'm okay. What's not okay is not doing anything about it. Right. And it's like, by God's grace, we have the power. Some of us have the ability to seek professional help, or like maybe it's even like venting to a friend, right? It's like we need that so that we can just be whole. Right? We need to be whole so that we can handle the hurdles that you were talking about.
Yeah, I fully agree, because it's just like, all right, something like this, no, like I need to take care of myself and just try to find my peace in all of these things going on. So the types of mental health, so we have mood disorders, that's the depression and the bipolar disorder. We have the anxiety disorders, amongst many. I know there's many out there, but we have mood disorders, we have anxiety disorders, we have eating disorders. So maybe if you're stressed, or if you're going through this time where everyone is isolated and you're left alone in your thoughts, and you feel like you just have to eat all the time or not eat at all. It could be both extremes, and so there's all sorts of things of how the types of mental illnesses, right? And just trying to catch yourself if you find yourself in this past few months, doing certain things that you wouldn't typically do. You know what I mean? Just trying to catch yourself and talk to somebody. I fully agree. It's not, I fully agree with what you said. It's not okay to not talk about it. That's what's not okay. And it's not okay to hide behind. And one thing I noticed, and tell me what you think about it, but one thing I noticed is on social media, when the whole lockdown thing happened, especially April, when everything was practically dead in the whole world, I noticed there was a lot of games, there was a lot of things going on Instagram, a lot of things. And I'm just like, okay, I get it that people are home and people are bored, but I'm like, it's fun, but are we truly trying to escape from the reality of what's happening? You know what I mean? So it was just something that I thought about. Hold on, let me try to see if I can open this window. Okay. So it was just something I just thought about, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Is this, we can't be hiding under laughter all the time and laughing about everything and playing about everything. Are we really talking? Are we really dealing with what we need to deal with? Or is this just some form of escape, of distraction? Good distraction, but at the end of the day, you're going to come back home and you're going to come back to yourself because we're all home. But then what? How are you really, really doing?
Yeah. So I think that, so it's kind of like how, like, when anything first gets started, right? A relationship, a new friendship, like maybe you start playing a video game, right? You want to, it's like you want to like just be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like there's just this like, I have to be near this all the time. I have to do something fun all the time. Like I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. And then like eventually it's like, okay, you just needed all of that to really tell you that you can be in this relationship or you can enjoy this job. You know what I mean? And then eventually things typically taper out. Yeah. And then it's like, it's when things taper out that we get to see, okay, is this what I really want, right? Playing a game, there's nothing wrong in playing a game to like pass away your sorrows, but it's not sustainable. It really isn't. And I think that at the beginning, like, yes, it was fun. I was just kind of like, I can't do any more challenges. Like, I tried to participate in as many as I could. I'm tired. I can't. Yeah. You know, but like, it's human behavior, right? That makes, like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that people are trying to do something. And I feel like people didn't think the lockdown or quarantine was going to last as long as it did.
Correct. Fully agree.
So it was just like, let's have fun. But then it's like, okay, it's 3 months now. It's no longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it
book ended a long time ago.
Right. Like it's interesting, but like at the same time, that's just like human behavior doesn't necessarily change, right? In the sense that like we may have different situations, but all across the board, like whenever something first starts, we typically see people like trying to like deal with it, and then like you eventually wait, right? It tapers out. Yes. And then you start becoming real. Yes. Right? Reality starts hitting you. That's when it's like the real change happens, right? Do I want to like wallow in pity, or do I want to make a step, right? So yeah, so I like it's interesting. At the end of the day, it's interesting, but I think we all know that none of those things are sustainable.
Correct. Yeah. And it's just dealing with what really lasts. You know what I mean? What really lasts, and just confronting it and nipping it in the bud and addressing it, right? Not trying to move away from it, because that's just not going to do anything.
Exactly.
So that's I fully agree. I wanted to ask actually, what are the key warning signs, right? Like the bleeping lights, the alarming situations. Like, what are the warning signs or symptoms that somebody might be going through a mental health issue or mental health issues?
So you were talking about anxiety and depression earlier. And like, yeah, we're going to talk about those later, but like, one of the warning signs, right, for depression, for example, is it's like people are not balanced. They are doing extremes, right? Okay. So for depression, for example, people are either sleeping too much or sleeping too little, right? It's like, I'm going to either sleep 20 hours a day or sleep 1, right? There's no balance. Or like for anxiety, right? It's like, I'm going to excessively worry about something I have zero control over, right? To the point where it's like crippling, right? So like some of the warning signs, like, people can't do what they typically do. they don't want to do what they typically do. So like, people lose interest, right? Or, like overcompensation, like we're just mentioning at the beginning, right? Where it's like, we're all just gonna play games, we're all just gonna do challenges, or we're just gonna shame people and be like, if you don't do this, then you lack discipline. You know what I mean? So I think those are like some of the signs of, mental unhealth. All right. Or if like people get triggered by anything, right? So people who've experienced PTSD, for example. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So it's just kind of like anything can set them off. Like maybe the time is 5:52, right? And then maybe something happened to them at 5:52. They can never get rid of that time in their mind, so they always freak out. So it's like if people become crippled or like they lose touch with reality. And losing touch with reality can look different for a lot of people, but it's just kind of like, I'm gonna just pretend that you're not here, right? People have some dissociative episodes where they either shut down or become a completely different person, right? So these are some of the signs. Like those are like the warning signs, right? Or like, bipolar disorder, for example, where it's like you're either hot or cold, and you never know when you're gonna be hot or cold, right? So these are some of like the just kind of like something's going on here. And I also want to say that it can be subtle, right? These signs can be very, very subtle.
Yeah.
And mental unwellness or mental illness, I should say, sometimes it's not just environmental. I do want to say that sometimes it's chemical, like literally, like some people are diagnosed with like major depressive disorder, right? Some people are like literally there's some chemical unwellness, right? Or like imbalance in their brain.
Yes.
So it can be that as well. So yeah, so I feel like depending on what the specific kind of mental illness is, then we can get more specific. But it's like, so just to wrap up this part, right? People either do too much or too little, right? So the extremes, they're not balanced.
Yeah.
They either like lose interest, right? Shut down, freak out, or like worry excessively, or just become an entirely different person. So those are some signs of.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because sometimes we're waiting for that big, sharp change, but like you said, sometimes it can be subtle, right? And you might be doing something too much or something too little, and you just brush it off like, oh, I'm in a mood, or I'm doing no. You have to pay attention to what's really going on. One of the ones that you mentioned was overcompensation. So like what's lacking, like why are you suddenly acting out of yourself, out of your character? You know what I mean? If you're trying to compensate for the way you're feeling, and just catching yourself. And if you find out that you're drifting away from who you know yourself to be, pay attention, right? Pay attention, and just like try to figure out, okay, what's going on here? Why am I acting the way I'm acting? You know what I mean? So just like paying attention to all of that stuff. And that's really important. So I think for this video, let's do one more sort of subtopic, and then we'll wrap up this one. And then, I said it was going to be long. And then we'll do the next one. All right. So women and mental health. Women and mental health. This one is big. This one is